Canada's Pat Mooney can't, simply won't accept hunger as inevitable for over 1 billion of the world's population. So he fights. Fights against government and industry apathy, fights to protect the diversity of our planet's food supply, and the rights of the world's hungry.
We've been saying all along and shouting this is a shameful summit. We have not achieved what we wanted to achieve. The governments have not done what they're supposed to do. Governments have been acting shamefully.
Pat Mooney is a noted Canadian author and activist. Winner of the Pearson Peace Prize in 1998, his tireless efforts to address the needs of the less fortunate has earned him international respect and credibility.
Well, I have a very clear memory of when, for me, world hunger issues became sort of central. And it was October 16th, 1963, to be exact. And sitting in Winnipeg, lying on the living room floor, in fact, on front of the TV set, trying to do my homework, and watching the news, and seeing on the news that night of October 16th, John Kennedy, as the U.S. president, speaking to what he called a World Food Congress. Kennedy said these memorable words, and I will never forget them.
We have the ability, as members of the human race, we have the means, we have the capacity to eliminate hunger from the face of the earth in our lifetime. We need only the will.
But once you start to think about hunger and you start to think about how you fight against hunger, it comes down pretty quickly to understanding, well, what do farmers need? What do poor farmers in the third world need to grow food and get it to their families and to their neighbors and to the communities around them? And it's a quick move from that kind of thought to the question of choices. Because what farmers need vitally and desperately are choices, options. I think of myself as being a product of the prairies. I was born in Brandon, but I left there when I was 5. But I moved to Winnipeg for a couple of years, and I lived in Dauphin for a year, and I lived in Saskatoon for a few years, and then I was back in Winnipeg, and I lived in Calgary and Regina and Edmonton at different times. So I see myself as being someone who has lived my life really on the prairies, and from Brandon onwards, it was to me that sense of distance and space and sky. I love the sky, and I love the wide open spaces that the prairies give you. And I lived for a decade on a farm and outside of Brandon, and for me that was a great decade. It was a great life. For me, the idea of hunger, the image of there being hunger in the world and being surrounded by farms that grew huge quantities of food, there's a sense of that for sure. Why should there have to be hunger? Look at all the food around us. I mean, it was everywhere. It seemed to be intolerable and unacceptable to actually have hunger.
Pat's a familiar figure at international forums and conferences. There, his presence has earned him a well-deserved reputation as a champion committed to the protection of the world's food supply.
"28 years ago was the 1974 World Food Conference, and we're in that place where that intergovernmental political meeting on food took place, and where some of us, at least, who are there now, actually heard, among others, Secretary Kissinger from the U.S. government announce to the world that within 10 years we would end hunger. That was 1974 in that building. And some of us, more of us, were here in this building in 1996 when we heard the government say that within 20 years we'd end half the hunger. So one of our recommendations is probably going to have to be that we better stop having summits. We can't keep this pace up much longer.
As biotech and nanotech converge to produce incredible scientific breakthroughs, huge ethical questions are raised. Who will control the research? How will it be used, and who will own the results? Where do public and commercial needs intersect, and how are both best served?
Perhaps the most shocking example I can think of nanobiotechnology is the work being done by Craig Venter in the United States, who used to be the head of the National Institutes of Health in their research program related to the human genome. Venter's got a contract from the U.S. government in which he is taking the simplest life form he could find, which is actually, peculiarly enough, it's a parasite found in the male genitalia. And he's taken that life form, stripped it down from its original 550 or so genes down to about 350 genes, and then he's replicated that DNA atom by atom, constructed it artificially atom by atom into new DNA, and now he's adding on additional genes atom by atom to create whole new life forms that we've never seen before. For the first time ever in history, God is competition, and it's Craig Venter.
Pat soldiers on, an extraordinary Canadian, fighting to provide a voice for those who cannot speak up to defend their own interests. Fighting to create a more compassionate world, a world that offers a legacy of hope for those who follow.
I've often thought that if I wasn't doing the work that I am doing, I'd like to be the mayor of a village. I'd like to, or at least be on the city council of a village or something. So much to be done at the village level, so much to be done to really build democracy, to really build people's sense of identity and sense of hope and so on, that perhaps some of the most important political work is not, again, where I am bopping off at the United Nations somewhere. Maybe it really is in a place like Winnipeg or a place like Brandon or Dauphin, where it's possible to really put your hands on the levers of power in the lives of people, in their day-to-day lives, and make changes there that can have, again, ripples around the world. I'm not pessimistic. I mean, I see a world around me in which there's huge problems, and they're not getting smaller. In many ways, they're getting bigger. But I have some faith that civil society and good, decent, concerned human beings, as we find them around the world, are more aware of the issues now, more aware of how to change things than we used to be. And I do have, I guess, it's a fault of some kind, I have a gene defect. It's not my eyesight, I have the optimism gene. And I'm sure that Monsanto would love to give me gene therapy and get rid of it. But the fact is, I do feel optimistic. I do have that sense that we as human beings haven't lost the planet yet. We haven't lost the poor yet. We can make a better world than we've had before, and God damn it, we will.